Hello and welcome to the Dragon's Lair podcast in association with Riverside Sports Bar, the home of live sport and great food in Newport. I'm Jamie and joining me is Gavin Thomas. Hiya Gav, how are we doing?
Very well, Jamie, very well. So, as you know, we talked about my run of sporting losses and the bad sporting season I've had this weekend. I played in the cup final for Hastings and Bexhill Vets. Yeah, we lost.
You lost, yeah. Okay, fair enough. But I saw that one coming, Gav, I'm not going to lie. Oh, yeah. But at
On
least everyone,
message.
at least
Yeah,
everyone on the
absolutely,
weekend.
absolutely, yeah.
And we're going to
But
talk about that later because that was terrific. What
but
a
as
win.
I promised when we had the SRC pod, I promised I wouldn't support everyone until after the final because I don't want to rub my kiss of death on them.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. No, it's fair enough. It's a fair point. But yeah, we'll talk about that later. So Garth is unavailable this week, but making I think it's his third appearance on this pod.
Yeah.
We have chairman of the Dragon Supporters Club, Dan Hallett. Hello, Dan. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. Good to be here. Yeah, and I believe you are right. It is my third appearance.
A hat trick. Yeah. Hat trick of appearances. And it's a good time to get you on because it's been another quiet week in Welsh Rugby, isn't it? Not much happening.
No, nothing. This will be a really quick pod. It'll be 5 minutes and be done.
Oh, there's never a dull day in Welsh Rugby, is there? Yeah, so we got lots to talk about. Look, let's just get this out of the way. Let's talk about the match on Saturday first. So Stormers beating Dragons 48-12. Let's be honest, we knew it was going to be tough. 19 players unavailable for this game. Then we had Rodney Jones pulling out just before kickoff. That meant that Dylan Keller-Griffiths was starting. Then we had to bring on 20-year-old Owain James onto the bench. It's not ideal, is it, having to play kids against a massive South African pack. And then Dan Lydiate left the field then to a head injury in the 27th minute, possibly meaning that's his final game of a remarkable career. I hope not, but it could be. It was a plucky effort from the visitors, but 3 Stormers tries in the final 8 minutes made the scoreline look more ugly than what I should have done, to be honest. So Gavin, let's start with you then. So Philo said in the week he wanted more fight and a clear identity from the Dragons. Did we see enough fight and identity on Saturday?
Right, fight. We were dogged, so I haven't got an issue with that bit of it. Identity. No, let's compare the two teams. Right? I don't watch a lot of South African rugby, but you could quickly see what Stormers were about. They were about quickly moving the ball wide and keeping the ball alive. They were trying to avoid rucks. There's lots of offloads. There's lots of out-of-hand stuff. Dragons, I watch all the time. I couldn't tell you what we were going to play like, and it wasn't really discernible yesterday. And even when we worked out what Stormers were trying to do, we weren't defending wide enough. We were getting caught wide far too easily. Yeah, so fight, yeah, well, they tried their very best against a good side, full of, top-level players. But identity, well, not really.
Okay, fair enough. Dan, you watched the game. What did you make of it? Was that better than you expected? Or same old story?
Probably, I'd go same old story. You can't fault, certainly first half, can't fault the effort. You can't fault they were dogged in defence. They cut down some Stormers attacks quite effectively. But it's still, I think we were very lucky with that try disallowed in the yellow card. Yeah. I think, yes, I think it was probably a penalty if it was brought, but rock roll, possibly not. So yeah.
It wasn't a croc roll, was it? In terms of the fact, because he's not putting pressure on the legs. It's a bit like I remember being taught how to roll people out the ruck sideways like that, kind of.
Yeah. I think it's because his arm was around his neck and head. I think that's what it. Yeah, and obviously we need to make sure that the player safety is paramount, and so we want to get that out of the game. If you're going to clear someone out, clear them out properly, not with slightly dubious methods.
Yeah.
Again, it's I don't know whether it's the strength and conditioning, whether it's the preparation. But the drop off then, I messaged my brother just before half time. I said, "Oh, look, must be a half time coming. We've just shipped 2 tries." And I don't know whether or not that's just a psychological thing now. And then we start the second half. Well, we get fairly close to them, and then it just goes away. Whether or not then we just, again, it's the kind of 60-minute mark, we just lose steam and we just drop off. And at the end of the game, we were chasing shadows, and as you mentioned, Gav, the Stormers, they were getting the ball out of contact before contact was made, and they were just offloading, and it was get it wide to dangerous, strong run-in players, and we just struggled with it. I mean, it's we got a long way to go, but I would say though, I would like the South African commentary team to have actually managed to get the accurate information. They kept on calling Dylan Roger Jones all
Yes.
game, and then when Owen came on, he was then Dylan. So they just obviously they hadn't had the up-to-date team sheets. So it's a little bit, again, dare I say it, where the quality of the broadcasting might have been a little bit better. I know we were only on the streaming only service and for Premier Sports, but maybe I should have switched over to S4C instead and listen to that.
I think because we weren't. I thought we competed well at the breakdown, and that was solid. We were slowing that ball down, but the minute they stopped taking it into contact, like you say, we were chasing shadows.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would say is I'm also glad. I'm slightly say not sad, because he would have probably destroyed us even further. But Brock, when he wasn't, obviously with an injury and coming out, but I thought it was a really good fit in touch when he came out to a guard of honor. I thought that was a really good touch. And obviously the two teams that he's basically played his entire career with, and the legend that is Brock Harris having a send off like that against his previous team as well. I thought that was a good touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the scrummage, it was weird because there were points when the scrummage really struggled, and then bits when we got that scrummage penalty in the second half, which eventually we scored from that kind of phase of play, or phases. Yeah, it was just weird, but again, underpowered in the pack, wasn't it?
I don't profess any kind of knowledge of how that area is played, but I also wasn't entirely certain that the calls that PRD was given were possibly equal. It seemed to be asked pinging Keller for hinging, but if you look at the angle of the South African,
he was
tight dead. He was all over the shop. So maybe, but then I know they say there shouldn't be any bias, but that's possibly of our own making for not being for being historically quite poor scrummaging team.
And referees will tend to penalise the team that's going backwards. Yeah, that's the easiest thing, because, like you say, how many referees have been in the front row? Not many. And it's easier to work there under pressure. But you're right, because the South African tight head was he wasn't scrummaging square. He was at an angle and boring in.
Exactly, and then there was another one a penalty that was given against us, which I thought we didn't actually. All we did wrong there was go backwards. Everyone was still bound, and yes, we were getting stepped backwards at the rate of knots, but we didn't go down. Nobody broke off the back row. That
tends to be a safety call.
Yeah,
but you'd reset rather than a penalty in that situation.
So a frustrating game, because there were elements and glimpses of. We can see what we kind of could do, and I probably would say we're not a bad broken field team. I just wonder sometimes with our attacking structure, we tend to run out of ideas quite quickly. So I don't know whether or not that's something that needs to be looked at in further down the line. Just we maybe some of the recruits that coming in might help with that, because as I said, we don't have that many hefty ball carriers. We have hopefully Levi Douglas might, if he's, but just looking at the show reel, he looks like a big hefty lump that could hit some players out of the way. But We haven't got that at the moment.
No, we haven't got anyone who's really hitting the gain line and
Apart
dragging
from Wayne,
defenders with him. Yeah, well,
apart from
Wayno
Wayno.
and Tane. And, you know, Tane isn't a big physical runner, but he operates at such pace. He does get over the gain
Footwork.
line. Yeah. Levi Douglas, very, like you say, a very different kind of player. His discipline's questionable, but
So Tia said after the game, you can see we need to keep working on our set piece. And he's not wrong. Understatement of the season, I'd say. What do you think the percentage of the Dragons' scrum success was? Bear in mind, we got an absolute tune-in at scrum time. What do you think percentage-wise the Dragons came in at for scrum success?
I'm trying to think of how many penalties now. Piardi puts his arm up so much, it's difficult to remember. 40%, I'm going to be generous.
Okay. Dan, scrum success percentage for you? What do you think Dragons came at?
Is this on our own footing? No, probably we on our own ball. From memory, we tend to do quite a lot of quick ball, so I go slightly higher at 50%.
It was 63%. That was Dragons scrum success. Line out, which did not function. Unfortunately, Brody's throwing was a bit of a letdown. And that's a shame because Brody's always reliable, but I'm afraid his throwing was very disappointing on Saturday. The line out came in at 50% success. 50%. That's according to Rugby Pass stats. You
can't win games for those kind of stats, can you?
Absolutely not. No,
if,
not at all.
If you're not getting a first phase ball, you're not doing anything else. You're just defending, and that's part of the fitness thing. But because defending is a lot harder than attacking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, all things considered, it was a decent effort. Yeah. I thought it was going to be somewhere between 50 and 70 points, if I'm being honest, and we just about kept them under 50. But this game was a continuation of what we've seen from the Dragons all season, wasn't it? They are a team that just don't do the fundamentals well enough. And I think that comes down to coaching, if I'm being brutally honest. They make too many unforced errors. The penetration is poor. The set piece is creaky. Defensive, passive. Dragons are bottom of the league, and that's exactly where they deserve to be, because I find the Dragons a very difficult watch this season, purely because I just think we're a team that just do not do the basics well enough. But yeah, it could have been worse, but I'm saying that, and we've lost by 36 points. I think that's an indication of just how low the bar is now, where I'm saying it wasn't as bad as we thought, but we lost by 36 points.
Yeah,
but that's just where we are.
I think the scoreline wasn't particularly representative of the performance, possibly.
Yeah.
Up until the last day now, to say the last 8 minutes, which was it 3 tries. But yeah, but they must be doing something, or I've got a mind virus because I renewed my season ticket earlier this week. So glutton for punishment.
Well done.
We go. Another season, been there since the beginning. Looks like I'm going to be there till the end. No. But yeah, so it's the hope that kills you, though, because
how many times do we say that as Dragons fans?
22 years now, I think.
Yeah, I agree with what Ted Lasso said. I don't think it's the hope that kills. I think it's the lack of hope that kills. So that's what kills me more watching this Dragons team. But okay, let's move on to listeners' comments. We did have a few comments about this game. Matthew Owen says, set piece terrible again. Starting to feel sorry for these players. The board need to invest in a proper coaching unit with proven experience. Just bringing in a defence coach is not enough. Attack is woeful. Unless it's individual players creating something out of nothing, I believe the foundations are there, but that's not enough quality for an 80-minute game. Nick Royal gets in touch. He says, are the owners done with recruitment of coaches? It appears so, which is a concern. In addition, I feel for the players. They look broken. Stephen gets in touch and said, nothing against our centres, in particular Nyren, as he always puts in 110%. But watching the Munster versus Ulster game, it was great seeing how their centres broke gain lines and we were able to play the ball. Are we investing in a crash ball running centre? I don't know. I hope so. I mean, that's something we could really do with, isn't it? Centre is a weak spot for us, I think.
I don't think we necessarily need a crash ball centre, because that suits some teams. I don't think it's necessarily the way we want to play. We need a better centre. You know, because
I suppose I'm not with the coaching setup. Have they got the players that they want to be to play, to be able to play the style of play that they want to play? So is it kind of chicken and egg thing? We haven't got the players that they would like to play their preferred game plan, or is it that we just not recruit the right players for them?
Well,
or is it that we haven't got the coaches to get the best out of the players we've got? Which
Fair
is
point. Yeah.
It is a difficult one though.
But good coaches will cut their cloth accordingly. They'll see what they've got, and they'll go around. To use a quite a strange analogy, kids rugby, junior rugby, most coaches' strategies: who's a kid who's 6 inches taller than everyone else? Give it to him. But we are almost playing like that. I said, well, if Hugh Anderson gets the ball, something magical will happen. You can't operate in a professional rugby sector like that. I think the coach either needs to look at the players we've got and come up with a strategy that works for them, or we need coaches who can get something else out of these players.
Yeah, fair points.
Yeah.
Andy Solder gets in touch and said, we desperately need an experienced backs coach. Andy Hossett gets in touch and says, totally deflated, to be honest. Renewed our season tickets. Well done, Andy. But he says that's out of habit as we have seats.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but yeah, okay, fine. He says he don't even get that emotional about defeats anymore. Yeah, same year.
And that's a concern.
Yeah,
when people don't get
apathy is the worst.
Oh yeah,
apathy. We've said this on this podcast. When our supporters start turning apathetic, then that's a big concern when the apathy sets in. But he says, my question is this: is anyone genuinely happy with the coaching setup? This is across the board, from S&C coaches right up to the top. We look unfit, and there are too many injuries constantly, plus limited attack and defence. Unless we invest in the backroom positions and make some real hard decisions, then it's another year of jam tomorrow. Dan, I don't know if you can answer this question. You might have to be a bit more diplomatic because you're on the supporters club. For me, no, I'm not happy with the coaching setup. I'll be honest, I'm not. I think when you look at our coaching setup compared to the other Welsh regions, and indeed compare it to the other teams in the URC, I don't think it looks anywhere near elite or professional enough. And that's my brutally honest opinion. So no, I am not happy with the coaching setup. I would like more experience and coaches with pedigree, but it's down to the owners to make that happen. Gavin, what are your thoughts?
Oh no, you have absolutely said exactly what I think. That and it's not a personal thing.
No,
but
not at all.
The role of coaches is to get the best out of the players, and either these players aren't very good, or we aren't getting the best out of them. Well, I know some of those players are good. There are good players on that field, so we aren't getting enough out of them. So we need someone who's just, like I was saying to Dan, somebody who's just going to say, right, this is what you're good at. Let's make it really sharp. It's basic stuff we get wrong.
Yeah. Coaching setup. Personally speaking, this is where I'd focus a lot of the resourcing on. Coaching.
It's a question coming up. It's a question. Sorry, Dan, there's a question coming up. So maybe hold your powder.
I'll another one.
Right.
But what I will say about things like you mentioned, like we've got strength and conditioning and things like that. I believe that the role of head of medical services is still up for running. I would obviously, as a pharmacist, I would potentially go for that one, but I don't think I've got the skill set to do that. And quite possibly, yeah. So maybe that's one of the things we need to be looking at is the hate the word, but the holistic approach of everything is interconnected. So you get the strength and conditioning right, you get the medical side of it right, so you get your players fitter, more resilient. You get your if they do become injured, you get the rehab correct. And I hope that they took a shed load of money at somebody who's head of medical services, because they are going to make a massive difference. Like you said, Jamie, 19 players unavailable, 20.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
It's been like that all season as well,
Exactly. We've not seen Fanaki. We've seen sort of a half or a couple of halves of Cummins. It's the players that we've spent money on and paying their salary that we haven't seen because they've been constantly injured. And are they constantly injured because they're playing? They have to play because we have no depth, so they're playing with niggles, and then those niggles become more permanent injuries. So it's a kind of vicious circle that we've got paper thin squad playing players that shouldn't really be playing if we had depth because they should be recovering, and then away we go. So hopefully somebody like a new head of medical services would be a key appointment to make sure the rest of it fits into place. And on the coaching front, probably don't know enough of their traits. I'm fairly comfortable that there's been a fail for Dale McLeod. Is there a question about that, Jamie? Just make sure I don't jump ahead on something.
No, we will
Well,
talk about Dale
well,
McLeod a bit later, but no,
yeah.
there's no specific question about them.
No, so I just basically I know that it wasn't like a back of a fag packet or over a weekend decision. It was, and I know it was a very extensive process to actually identify him. He came out of that process. So obviously the proof will be in the pudding, but it's not. We can't go out and attract a Sean Edwards or a Andy Farrell. So we've got to make sure we get the right people who have the right mindset, the right kind of way of working, and we won't be able to break the bank for them. But if we can get the best we can get for the pounds we can spend, and I'm mildly optimistic that he will be right. And plus, he's worked with Philo previously, and against him. So and there's I think there's a mutual respect there, and I hope that will transfer through. And as Philo said, he's not a man that doesn't challenge. So certainly like behaviours or attitudes. So hopefully that will come through.
Yeah, absolutely. So Harry Crabtree says this: who would be your ideal, realistic marquee signing? He then says, also, do you think it's possible for us to get a new attack coaching for next season? Matt O'Brien is badly out of his depth. I don't see us changing the attack coach. I think that Matt is going to be with us next year. I know that's very unpopular with a lot of supporters. I've got doubts about that position, as do many others, but Matt is going to be probably on the coaching team next season. In terms of the ideal, realistic marquee signing, I haven't got any names, but I would like, if we are going to get a marquee signing, which I'm a bit skeptical about, if I'm being brutally honest, but if we do get a marquee signing, I think it should be an outside centre, because Harry Wilson, for whatever reason, it's not working out with Harry. I don't know what's going on lately. I've been on his Instagram the past few weeks. He's on holiday every other week. I mean, he's had more holidays than Thomas Cook, that guy. So I don't know what on earth is going on there. Also, as well, he's got a lot of work on, doesn't he? He's very raw, and he probably just needs more games, more confidence. So I do think we need a quality, experienced outside centre, because we've gone from this position where we had a lot of strength in the centres, didn't we? We had Steph Hughes, we had Co Tompkinson, we had Max Clark, and now all of a sudden we're down to the bare bones again. And I like Joe Westwood. He's a good kid. He's got a lot of work on, in particular with his defence, and he's not the fastest, but I do like him. He's going to be one for the future. But I just feel that we need experience and quality. Although I would add, I would keep Scott Williams for another year. I know this is a story that was in the Argus. I would, just for experience and leadership, because this group badly needs experienced leadership. Scott provides that, and he was very good at Judgment Day. So, Dan, I'll come to you then. Who would be your ideal, realistic marquee signing? Well, what position do you think we should go for? I mean, I think it should be outside centre personally, because it's a very important position. But what do you think?
I kind of agree, but I could be cheeky and go. But in the deal, there's room for two marquee signings. But yeah, so I think outside centre is definitely one. I just for that experience, for that. That the depth chart there isn't very deep. So yes, definitely. So you need that. Who can we afford? Don't know. The other one for me though is probably, I'm just going back to the times when we used to have Will Rowlands in the second row. For those who, I think maybe Levi Douglas will fulfill a role in that, but a big, hefty, angry second row who just dominates, which Will Rowlands did for us. When he played for us, we were a different team.
That's true.
We're absolutely
Douglas
different.
isn't as gnarly as Will Rowlands.
He might be aggressive, but not as controlled.
No, I'm a huge Will Rowlands fan. I've talked about on the pod, but we do need, our second rows are too nice. That sounds a weird thing to say, but I like I like Matthew Screech. I really like Ben Carter. They're both very good players, but they aren't running people's, nobody's checking under their bed at night for Ben Carter, are they? Whereas with Will Rowlands, there was a definite sense of that.
Yeah, and it's not like the Alan Wynne Jones watches you sleep.
No.
I actually think Seb Davis is a good signing as well. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think this is a guy who's very experienced, Welsh international, physical. Big lad. I think he'll be. I think we've recruited a couple of good locks, but I do take your point. I wouldn't say we were a good team with Will Rowlands, but we were competitive. We're much more competitive than what we are now. We're just not competitive at the moment.
We weren't bullied.
No, that's right. Worryingly, Matthew Screech has been out for a little while now with concussion, and that is a big concern. But so you're saying lock, are you, Dan? That's where you would prioritise?
Probably, because I think we've recruited well enough for the back row, and we've got good back rowers in our squad. We've recruited quite a few props and re-signed a few props. Martinez, I'm quite happy we re-signed him when he first came in. I was watching a pre-season game with him, and he absolutely hammered people. He was like a man possessed in that pre-season game. We haven't quite seen that in the league, but he looked really, really useful then. And I'm hoping that he's now comfortable in where he is. He's got the confidence that he's got another extension on his contract, so maybe we can see him a bit more of his defensive work in that preseason game. The foundations of Rodney Parade were shaking because he was hitting people so hard.
Okay,
but hopefully, So on that, outside centre and lock for me, because I just think they're so fundamental to how we would improve.
Okay, Gav, same for you then. Before we move on,
I think I'd like to see something else at 10. But that's more rearranging the deck chairs and this. So probably second row and outside centre, but a top class 10 would be nice too.
Okay, fair enough. Graham has a question for us. This is quite an interesting. For me, it's an easy question to answer. He asks us this: would you prefer to spend money on a marquee signing, or spend money on quality, experienced coaches? You can probably guess what my answer is going to be.
And we'll all have the same answer, won't we?
Dan?
Coaches.
Marquee player? Coaches? Yeah. Same here. Gavin?
Coaches, yeah.
Because
coaches can turn decent players into good players and good players into great players.
I agree.
But lack of coaching can turn expensive players into players who don't get your money's worth out of.
And we've seen that a lot at the Dragons over the years. Let's be honest, unfortunately. So, we're pretty adamant on that one then. So, quality experienced coaches. And then finally, Errol Tottle gets in touch. Is that his real name? Funny if it is. Errol Tottle. He says, it's, I don't know if it's made up or if it's his real name. Or it could be she, I don't know. It's nearly over. Let's forget about this season and focus on next season. Finances are on a good foundation, and the defence coach coming in, some good signings being made, and he says players coming back from injury. Well, that'd be a change for the players actually coming back from injury. Surely not. And he says we got some really bright prospects coming through. More good signings and an improvement in the coaching setup. Yeah, there's a theme with these comments tonight, isn't there? Coaching improvement. Improvement in the coaching setup is what we need. Let's hope the owners are already getting on with it. So thank you to everyone who sent their comments in. Right, let's move on then. News. there's a little bit of news to talk about. Because as I said earlier, there's never a dull day in Welsh Rugby, is there? So let's talk about the big story that sent Welsh Rugby Twitter wild over the weekend. So as we know, the new PRA deal hasn't been agreed and signed by all 4 teams. And the reason for this is because there are, let's be honest, valid concerns around the WRU's ownership of Cardiff after they went into administration. So last week, the WRU gave Dragons, Scarlets and Ospreys a 48-hour deadline to sign the new PRA deal, or they would risk having their licenses revoked and being served a 2-year notice period. Now, on Friday morning, there were murmurings that Dragons had signed this deal. Supporters saying, I hope we haven't, I hope we haven't. But on Friday evening, it was confirmed that Cardiff and Dragons have signed the new PRA. And it's fair to say that Welsh Rugby Twitter went a little bit mental with this, with many people accusing the Dragons of caving into WRU pressure, myself included. I'll talk about that in a bit. And a lot of supporters of other teams calling us scabs. So as things stand, Cardiff and Dragons are set to start next season on the new and increased funding, while the Ospreys and Scarlets would be on the current terms, creating an east and west split. So Dan, I want to come to you on this. Now, this is why we got you on, not going to lie. So on a serious point now, we've seen statements from the Ospreys and the Scarlet supporters clubs. Now, we haven't heard anything from the Dragons supporters club on this. There has been some criticism aimed towards the Dragons because they've signed this deal. What is your position as an organisation, as a supporters club, on this deal being done?
Okay, so a little bit of a preamble on this. Earlier, I don't remember what it was, earlier this week, I was involved in a meeting with the joint supporters group that was with the WRU, the other supporters groups, and also, which was nice and refreshing, with the senior management teams of the 4 professional teams. I will say it was a very positive meeting. It seemed that everyone was kind of aligned in their vision of how they would go ahead, and can't obviously go into much detail because the minutes are not being approved yet, but they will be out as soon as they are. And it was a bit of a surprise when the threat of the 48-hour signing came out from the WRU, because it didn't tie in with the meeting that we'd had previously. Going on from how the reason why the Dragons have signed. Now, I'm going to possibly put it out there that David Wright, Ho Young, David Buttress are slightly more experienced in the world of business and contracts and business agreements than your average Twitterati or X-Men. I trust their judgment, basically. It's their own money. They're the ones that are going to be stumping up the cash. So you don't get to be a wealthy businessman by making stupid, rash decisions. So I'm very comfortable that they have had some assurance, some guarantees from the WRU that the ownership of Cardiff will not be disproportionately detrimental to the Dragons. Whether or not the Ospreys and the Scarlets feel the same way, they obviously don't, because they haven't signed.
No.
And I suspect there's a little bit of history in it, because obviously the situation that we were in, being WRU owned, maybe there's an understanding that how it works, that we know we can't be completely equal. For example, I'm pretty certain that if there was some maintenance work that was needed at Rodney Parade, that they didn't then give that same amount of money to the Ospreys or the Scarlets or to Cardiff, because they had to spend some money on a fundamental infrastructure purpose, or even health and safety, something that needed to be fixed. So there's got to be some leeway in that. There's got to be some wriggle room. Now, obviously, if the WRU then decided that actually, no, we're going to just put all of our spare cash into Cardiff, then that would be not right. So I suspect there's been some kind of assurance that that's not going to happen. Because, yeah, David and Ho Young wouldn't be signing it if that was the case, or what that was the potential. As for us caving in and capitulating, not a chance. For the reasons I mentioned, those three are not naive, and Rhys Blumberg is not naive. In fact, he's definitely not naive. He's seen it from the other side in Cardiff as well. So I suspect that there probably are some more assurances that Ospreys and Scarlets want, but for us to have signed it, there must be enough confidence that the risks of signing it have been mitigated to allow us to sign, and that our owners, who have very deep pockets, but they don't particularly want to be spending all of it if they don't have to. So
No.
no, so I'm comfortable that we've signed it, because I'm comfortable that we wouldn't have signed it unless it was somewhat equitable or fair. But what I would say as well is I hope that the WRU report on the any funding that goes to Cardiff a little bit more transparently than they did the Dragons, so we don't get the situation where we had
the accusations.
The accusations, yes, of 9 million or whatever it was, which it just wasn't reported as accurately as it should have been, in my opinion.
No, and David Buttress debunked that on this pod. Abby Tierney debunked it, and I believe the Supporters Club as well put out a statement saying it was unfounded and just not true.
Correct, we did. And yeah, it's just not reported accurately. So yeah, and I'm fairly certain that the Dragons management team have also raised it with the WRU, and yeah, so hopefully we'll see a little bit more transparency, which will be a novel thing for Welsh Rugby.
Yeah, chance to be a fine thing. Gavin, what's your take on the events for the past week?
Right. So I think at first I was a bit like, oh, why have we done that? But now I've seen comments from the ownership. I'm a bit more, yeah, I understand it. My issue with it has been around some of the language that I've seen being used, and I don't want to pick at like kind of old wounds, but I've seen the phrase scab being bandied about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm old. As someone said at Judgment Day, oh, you're the old bloke off the Dragons podcast. I am the old bloke off the Dragons podcast. But
as Jamie goes, yes.
But the word scab is problematic.
Yes.
The word scab is problematic, particularly in the Gwent Valleys, where, I know people who had to leave communities because they made the decision to go back to work during the miners' strike and other strikes. And to bandy the word scab around in the context of a business decision is reductive and offensive, if I'm honest. And I really did struggle with fans of other clubs using that word. And some of them might not know the weight of that word, but some of them definitely should know the weight of using that word in these communities. And it's wrong, because they're not a scab. This isn't the workers fighting against injustice. These are multi-million-pound businesses negotiating deals. It's the wrong word, the wrong tone. And by calling teams a scab, I think you're missing the point.
Okay, but as a Dragons supporter, and how did you feel about Dragons signing a deal? Does that make you comfortable? Are you happy that Dragons have signed the deal, or do you think we should have held out like Ospreys and Scarlets? And I've seen people saying that all three should have stuck together.
What are they going to get? What are they going to get that's different to us? Nothing, by holding out. Are they making a point? Yeah, it's fine. They're badly run businesses. Being worse, kind of having less money is not going to make it any better for them. The Cardiff thing's an issue. I get that.
It's a conflict of interest, just as it was when Dragons were under union ownership, in fairness.
I get that, but I also, as Dan said, I also believe that the people who signed it for us aren't idiots. You know, they've all made a lot of money in business, so they're not going to do anything that's going to put their stake at risk. So they've gone into it eyes open wide. And I've seen all these people saying, "Oh well, that means Scarlets and Ospreys can go and join the English League now."
Yeah.
Who's going to fund that?
But they can't.
WRU wouldn't do it, would they? You know?
No. They also can't, because don't they have to play, if they are RFU affiliated, they have to play in England, I believe.
Yeah. Well, that used to be the deal.
Okay. The other bit I was just also going to bring up on that is all the other three obviously want Cardiff to go back into private ownership.
Yeah.
As they did with us when we were WRU owned.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a concern that holding back and not signing, for possibly very valid reasons, and I understand that that they will have concerns. We're obviously comfortable with the risk on that. Is that if they don't sign it, does that jeopardize or potentially delay Cardiff being sold to an investor or a buyer? So are there going to be potential issues that there's a split economy as such with Cardiff and the Dragons under one agreement and Ospreys and Scarlets under another, or does that then provide a detrimental indicator for Cardiff being sold and being then taken back into private ownership and out of WRU hands? So I know there's been I've seen some rather imaginative thoughts that the WRU might make Cardiff Wales's Leinster.
Well, that was one of my questions, actually, Dan. It's like you've seen my notes and you're jumping ahead. So there are concerns from supporters of the Ospreys and Scarlets that the WRU plan to turn Cardiff into the Welsh Leinster and make them a super club to the detriment of the other teams. Is that a genuine concern, do you think?
I would be amazed if that was A, possible, or B, achievable. Because apart from anything else, there isn't enough money in the Welsh game at the moment to do that kind of thing. Now, you could argue that they could then funnel funding into Cardiff to create a budget that's, I won't say Leinster size, because that's probably a bit pie in the sky, but a big enough budget to talent harvest from the rest of from the other three. But this is why I say that I don't think that's a possibility, because we wouldn't have signed it if that was still a risk.
100%.
I think there's probably some assurance around proportionality of funding, but whether or not it's like if they spend £1 on Cardiff extra, that they have to give £1 extra to the other three, then possibly that might not be the case. But if it's a disproportionate, there may well be some formula of acceptable additional funding. It might even be additional funding to make Cardiff more attractive to investors.
That's what I'm thinking. See, I think the WRU want to make Cardiff attractive to investors, but the idea that they're going to turn them into the Welsh Leinster, like you said, first of all, the resources and money isn't there to do that. Second of all, there is a salary cap. So I don't see how that's possible. And thirdly, it would be a massive conflict of interest. I mean, it's a conflict of interest now, Cardiff being under union ownership, as I said, as it was with us. But I can't see how the union could turn or attempt to turn Cardiff into the Welsh Leinster. I can understand them wanting to make successful and attractive to potential buyers, but the idea of the Welsh Leinster doesn't quite
doesn't float it for me.
But,
no, not me.
And there's a naivety as well, isn't it? Because if suddenly someone said, right, I'm going to put 15 million into Cardiff Rugby tomorrow to pay for all their players, what you don't have is the system that Leinster have built underneath them, where the schools and the universities and the clubs operating below Leinster's level are all being coached by people trained in the Leinster way, and there's these clear pathways which are also well funded.
Yeah,
it's you're not comparing like for like.
No. So I've got to hold my hands up here. When I found out that we had signed the deal, I was a little bit miffed. My first thought was that we caved to WRU pressure. And I wrote that on Facebook as well. That was my initial thought. I thought, yeah, we've caved in. We haven't stuck together. Having been told additional information by somebody at the club, I can honestly say this definitely was not the case. And I'll hold my hands up there and I'll retract that statement. It was wrong for me to say that we caved in because we hadn't. And that's backed up by Chris Kerwin, what he wrote in his Argus column. Last week, he wrote, and I quote, "The Argus understands that far from being put under pressure by the first day deadline, the Dragons were content with a new deal and happy to sign up once a few minor concerns had been addressed." So we did have concerns. We flagged those concerns with the union. And as far as the Dragons were concerned, they addressed them. And then we were happy to sign the deal. Now, I won't mention the person's name, but I did get in contact with the club and I asked questions about it. This is what I was told. I was told that we are absolutely committed to ensuring the most successful future for our club. He said to me, "Please have faith, we are not stupid. There's a hell of a lot of detail that's not shareable, as I'm sure you can understand. This deal provides certainty and sustainability for our club." So I was told in no uncertain terms there that, yes, we were not put under pressure. It is right for our club that we signed this deal and that the owner's not stupid. They know what they're doing. And I think, okay, fair enough then. Fair enough. Just because this deal might not sit right with Ospreys and Scarts, just because it's not right for them, that doesn't mean it's not right for us, because I think we're in a very different position for those clubs. And also, we have to be honest here, right? We can't really take the moral high ground here because we have been in the same position as Cardiff. We have also been under union ownership. So I think it makes it very difficult for us to take the moral high ground. But also as well, David Buttress was asked by a supporter on X what had changed to convince the Dragons to sign this deal. I don't know if any of you saw this. And he replied, and fair play to him, this is what I've always liked about David. He responds to supporters all the time on social media. Not every co-owner or chairman does that. I know Lance Bradley, he puts himself out there a lot and he does this, but David was the original guy. He was doing this long before Lance Bradley was. And I appreciate him, being honest with supporters. He said, "Several key points and clarifications have made us comfortable as an ownership to sign." He said, "Each club will have its own views and issues. I hope the others get there. I could see no material reason not to sign at this stage and move on in building Welsh Rugby." And then he added, "And to be fair, no one has been and is as sceptical as I am regarding WRU deals." What do we think of that? Is that fair enough, Dan?
That's fair enough. I think that's fair enough. And as you guys know, you have had David on, haven't you? Yeah. So it's a few times. There's no mincing words with Mr. Buttress. If he has an opinion, he'll let you know it. And as I mentioned earlier, something must be in place for those three businessmen to be comfortable with the risk that they're going to take with not inconsiderable amounts of their own money, because the WRU have put in the benefactors kind of covering losses and et cetera, et cetera. So and there probably isn't anybody who's more skeptical of the run of the WRU than David himself. So that's where my comfort in the fact that we've signed has come from, is statements like that from him. Yeah, so
fair enough. Gavin, any further to add?
No, I think you've summed it up really well.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just end on this. I think best of luck to Scarlets and Ospreys. I don't think supporters should judge them for doing what they're doing, for sticking together, not signing. Just as I think supporters of our team should not judge the Dragons for signing this deal, because at the end of the day, Dragons are a business and they have to make the best decisions for their stakeholders and organisation. It's as simple as that. This is the best deal for us. We're fine with it. So we move on. I do hope a deal is done soon, because we need unity. We need alignment in Welsh Rugby. we never seem to get it, do we? I know. It's wishful thinking. But we can never move forward if there's a split and disharmony in Welsh Rugby. We will never grow, will we? Together. So best of luck. I fully understand their reasons not for signing it. I do. In fairness, I think that's their prerogative. I'm not going to judge them for it. I think good luck to them. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know what the end game. I don't know what the end game is for them. I mean, for Ospreys, they need to sign that deal for St Helens. They're probably more vulnerable now because they really needed their security with St Helens coming up. So where that leaves them, I don't know. And that's something for Ospreys fans. I would be a little bit worried if I was an Osprey fan, to be honest. But that's for them to think about. They'll make decisions that's right for their organisation, just as Scarlets will, and just as we have. So, yeah, I think we've covered that now. Unless there's anything else you two want to add before we move on?
No, nothing from me.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for your input on that, Dan, as well. It's appreciated to you because like I said, we haven't heard anything from the supporters club on this. We've heard from all the others, but we haven't really heard from our own. So
that'll be my fault because I've been absolutely crazy busy.
Not the pop you might have just
no, but it's but just on the sports club, I just want to shout out to Christian Hyde and Rachel Hyde who organised the awards the evening down in Rodney's bar last week. Really, really well done to them because they've done it all basically, and
they organised the trips as well. They put a lot of work in.
They do put in a hell of a lot more work than I do.
Well, you're honest. It's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to what we've done that now. That's the PR. That's our views on it. Some people will agree, some won't. But we're comfortable with what the Dragons did, so that's fine. Right, in other news then, Dale McLeod will join Dragons next season as the Welsh Rangers' new defence coach, and boy, do we need one. So the New Zealander will leave his current role as Northland head coach, and he will be reunited with current Dragons head coach Philo Tiatia, who he previously worked with in Super Rugby. So a little bit of info. McLeod coached Southland in the NPC. He assisted Monica Pacifica in Super Rugby, and he worked with Tonga during the 2023 World Cup. So how do we feel about this? I mean, I gotta be honest, I never heard of this guy before. This is not a household name in rugby. He does seem highly respected. Dan, are you happy with this appointment? I mean, it's good to have a defence coach in, surely, isn't it?
Well, yeah. The fact we've got one is a positive in itself. All I've heard about is that he is very well respected. I know that I've seen some comments about the track record of some of the teams that he's coached, but if you're a defence coach, are you ultimately responsible for results? No, but you are probably responsible for the amount of points scored against you. But I think it's going back to that behaviour and culture that he's obviously worked with Philo before, so they know each other well, and if it brings in that change in attitude and culture and what we do, how we do it, then I'm all for it. It's a risk worth taking. But as I mentioned, I do know that there was a very extensive recruitment process. And he was the one that came out of that at the end. He wasn't like, we're going to go and get him. There was an extensive process where I believe there were tens of people that were interested in the job, and others didn't interview that well, but he did, and with his background, I suppose, and also his experience now, we need that. We've got, I say, Matt O'Brien and who else
Sam Hobbs.
Yes, Sam Hobbs. Yeah,
the forwards coach.
Yeah, both in their mid-30s, who are very, in relative terms, inexperienced coaches. They may be very good, but they haven't got that experience. And you need somebody who's got grey hair. I like Philo.
What about no hair, like me? Would that be acceptable?
Bit of both. Grey / no hair. And obviously, I'm hoping hoping that with the Paul Turner consultancy kind of being a sounding board for some of the options as well. I think he's mentioned now that he's going to be not doing. Obviously, he's not doing Amtel anymore. He's going to be there as in a consultancy role, and I'm hoping that experience level on the top tier will start to drip through and give some confidence and give some advice and guidance to the younger coaches, because we know they need it. You're not an instant coach, because obviously Dan Lydiate looks like he's going to be coming on as a coaching team for
That's right.
contact area, and he's worked under a lot of very, very good coaches, Sean Edwards, for example, but he's going to be cutting his teeth with us, which sometimes I'm a little bit skeptical of, that you cut your teeth at a professional club. Should you be working either academy style and work your way up? But maybe they've seen something there that will be worth holding on to and keep making sure that we keep that. If we can bring to another Dan Lydiard, that would be a superb bit of work, because the man is a legend. Hopefully, I haven't heard anything about the injury yesterday. I don't know whether or not it's going to be keep him out of next week, but if not, what a career.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But on Dale, we won't know until the season starts. I know he's supposed to be going and meeting up with the squad and everything in South Africa this week, and then obviously coming over to Newport when he's in the pre-season.
No, fair enough. So, did any of you read the statement from Northland Rugby regarding Dale's departure? No. To be fair, he's very highly thought of. I'll just give you a snippet of what it says. So it says, Dale has been a pivotal figure in developing both the players and the culture within the Taliwa. His passion, work ethic, and connection to our people has been second to none. He has laid strong foundations that we will continue to build on. We are truly grateful for his commitment and leadership, and we wish him all the best as he takes this next step in his career. So this was quite a lengthy statement, right? Something that did stick out to me, the word culture pops up a lot. And I think that's important, because this is a club, I think, that doesn't have the right culture. I think culture there's a big question mark over the Dragons culture. And I think this is potentially a pretty decent pickup. My only concern is that, most of his experience is in the NPC, which is the second tier competition to Super Rugby. Also, as well, Northland, they are last but one in the table. So they are currently 13th, and they've won just 2 games all season. And he's currently head coach. So
he's more successful than Philo.
Well, he's won more games than Philo, certainly.
Yeah.
But
coming into a similar scenario then. But
that's my only sort of. There are some question marks as well. But what about you then, Gav? What do you think of the sign? I guess it's the same, isn't it? We need to see.
Yeah, I don't know enough about him.
No.
I'll watch the occasional NPC game on Sky, but I'm not knowledgeable about it. You've got to give him a chance. It's hardly mouth-watering, but let's see where we are at Christmas.
But is it enough, Gav, just bringing in a defence coach? It's not at all.
No.
We need more experience.
We need experienced forwards coach and experienced backs coach, and I'm not anti the guys who are doing the job already, but they aren't experienced enough to get, if you were a top-level centre, I watched the Super Rugby this weekend. So say we managed to convince David Havili he wanted to come to Newport. He was fed up with Canterbury. He didn't want to play for the Crusaders anymore, and he came to Dragons.
Marquee signing.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you could potentially as a marquee signing, and he gets there, and there's a bloke who's 5 years older than him, who's playing semi-pro rugby coaching him. He's not going to be impressed, is he?
No. And I think that's entirely fair. I really do. I think that's fair. Tell you what is encouraging. I'll just read you something. This was a little while ago, but I'll just read you this. So when McLeod was in charge of Southland, not Northland now, the club before Southland, they went from being the worst defensive team in the NPC in 2019 to the best in 2020. So Southland conceded 37.2 points per game. 12 months later, that was reduced to just 19.3 points per game in the 2020 season. He did it with a team. Listen to this. He did it with a team operating with the lowest player budget in the NPC. That's encouraging. I know it's NPC level, but he does have a track record of tightening up defense. So that's something to cling on to.
Yeah,
it is. And we set a precedent now, so we'll have to work out what our points per game is this season and see how close we are to the Southland figures by the end of next season.
I don't know what the official stats are, but it feels like we're conceding 40 plus points a game at the moment. I don't know what it is, but that's how it feels.
I'd say it's about that.
Yeah, it probably is, in fairness. We joke, but it probably is.
Yeah.
So if we can get down to 19 points per game, then he's transferred his skills from NBC to URC.
Yeah, happy days. But with that one, I think we'll agree that the proof is in the pudding. But,
Yeah.
It's just nice to have a defence coach on board.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about new signings then, comings and goings. Tinas De Beer, since we've last recorded the pod, he's officially signed now from Cardiff. De Beer established himself as a firm favourite at the Arms Park, winning both the Fans Player of the Season and Players Player of the Season awards last year. He had a very, very good season, didn't he, in that first
He did,
season at Cardiff. Fair play. He was I think he was one of the best overseas signings in Welsh Rugby, a real Moneyball signing. It's mad to think, though, that the WRU tried to stop him being signed. I don't know if you remember that, but they put the block on that, didn't they? They stopped Cardiff initially from signing him because they felt he wasn't of the sufficient quality and he was going to block young players' development. But he's proven to be a hit at Cardiff. Not so much this season. He hasn't had many opportunities. He's had injuries. I watched Bulls Cardiff yesterday. I got to be honest, he wasn't great. But then again, he was playing by a pack that got absolutely destroyed. So you do have to bear that in mind. Dan, what's your thoughts on Tinas De Beer? Is he the right guy that we need to improve our obvious fly half woes? Because fly half has been another problem position, isn't it?
Yeah. He's certainly not going to be any worse than what we've got. Whether or not he can have that consistency, I suppose. And we had it last year where Will Reid was basically having to carry the whole fly half position by himself, which wasn't fair on him, being such a young kid. And it adds to the depth charge for the depth charge.
Yeah.
So yes, a good sign in. Would I have possibly wanted to take a bit more money at somebody else, possibly? But again, if he can reproduce what he did for Cardiff last season, then happy days. But he's going to have hopefully not have so much of a on the back foot pack for us next season with some of the other signings we've had. It's a good signing. Does it fill me with he's going to be the starting 10 every week? No, probably not.
Interesting. Gavin?
Yeah, he's like I said, I think we should invest in another 10 because he's backup 10 energy for me. He's an upgrade on what we've got.
Yeah.
He's an upgrade on, Kai Evans doesn't get inside. Lloyd Evans has not been the player we thought he might be.
Nope.
And Will Reid is, Will Reid can't carry on his shoulders. He's not quite there either. So he'd be a good backup choice for me. I would prefer a better player at 10 though.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough.
I'm not sure he's above and beyond Angus.
No, he's probably at the same level as Angus, but I would rather have Angus at 15 anyway.
I would
given my rathers.
Yeah.
I prefer Angus at 15.
But at least we've got the additional monster boot as well. So yeah, it is that. We continue with the outside out with the massive boot if
But I'd like a good goal kicking 10 as well, though, which De Beer isn't.
No, and that's been a big problem, goal kicking. It cost us the game against Ulster and it's cost us many games over the season. When you look back on the near misses, it has been because of goal kicking. I don't know what on earth goes on at Bustrom and why they can't kick their goals. Cardiff have got a similar problem with their goal kicking, but Ben Thomas can actually kick goals. So they might just use him going forward. But we've got to address that goal kicking problem. I was going to say it'd be interesting to see what happens with Lloyd Evans, because I know Chris Kerman was right in that he's out of contract this season, but he's saying, is it worth keeping him for another year at least?
If we could get another 10, I wouldn't bother personally.
Depends how much.
For me, I agree. If it's I don't want to say cheap deal. Please don't want to say cheap deals, but if it's a reasonable deal, is it worth keeping him? Well, here's the question then, right? So you've got Kai Evans coming out the contract as well. He's also a fullback / fly half, and you've got Lloyd Evans as well. So if you had a choice, we had to offer one contract, another year to one of those players, who would it be? Lloyd Evans or Kai Evans?
Oh, God. It's Hobson's choice, isn't it?
It's,
Lloyd Evans, probably, just because he's younger and less injury prone.
Dan?
probably the same, but it's a toss of a coin,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Neither of them are appealing options, are they?
No, it's not much of a choice. I know, admittedly.
It's like when you get to a dessert and the only options are like a kind of an apple crumble or cheese board. You know?
Have an apple crumble. Oh,
Chuck
see, I
cheese
like
board
an
every
apple
time, see?
crumble.
See, I'd want something meringue-based. Where's the meringue-based option? There's no meringue-based option in those
Okay.
tens.
Well, to use that analogy, and Lloyd Evans is my apple crumble. So I'm
Yes.
going for Lloyd Evans apple crumble. So, okay, fair enough.
He's my cheese board. Which is the same thing, but yeah, I'm not a fan, but he's fine.
Okay. And then departures, scrum half Dane Blacker will return to the Scarlets in the summer. To be fair, he actually did all right off the bench against the Stormers, I thought.
He played well.
There was that kick which led to the attack and scrum, and then Dane scored, didn't he? He actually added impact from the bench, which is something, frustratingly, we haven't seen enough of him do. So I think with this, though, I think this is a move that's good for all parties.
Oh, yeah.
I think Dane will be the first to admit that he probably hasn't hit the heights since he moved from the Scarlets. And let's not forget, when he was at the Scarlets, he was keeping Gareth Davis out of the team. He was in very good form. He got called up to the Wales squad. But with us, he never really kicked on. And this is something that we spoke about, Gav. When Dane started, I didn't feel he grabbed the 9 jersey by the scruff of the neck. And when Rodri went off and Dane came on, it always felt like a drop-off. I think that was the problem I had. So,
hasn't he been commuting from West Wales as well?
Yeah, possibly. It also playing in our defensively naive / weak team. It wasn't the best for him either, because I don't think he was the most defensively sound from half either.
No. But he'll do very well at the Scarlets. Mark my words. He'll go back there and he'll look like a Will Peter, and he will do very well in that system.
Attacking wise, yes, he's a sharp operator. So I think, he'll work well there. Yes, as you said, good for all parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not confirmed yet, but George Knott as well is on the way to Cardiff. I like George, really nice guy. I spoke to him a couple of times at events. He's been very active in the community as well, hasn't he, Dan? He's done a lot of Dragons in the community events. And
the Dragons wheelchair rugby team, I think he's a big supporter of them as well. I think he's done a lot of stuff with them, and he's just one of those good guys. He's a good squad player as well. You know, he feels.
I would have kept him. I'm not going to lie. I would have kept him. Maybe it's a financial decision. I don't know why he was signed on from London Irish. I don't think it was cheap, to be honest. But I would have kept him personally. But it's up to the club. They got to cut their cloth, haven't they?
Yeah.
So it's fair enough. Right. Okay. I think we'll leave it there, Dan. Great to have you with us. I really do appreciate you coming on. Like I say, it's been a hell of a week in Welsh Rugby, and I really wanted to get the thoughts of you and the supporters club on a very divisive issue right now in Welsh Rugby. But I do appreciate it.
But we're used to it now, aren't we? There's never a dull moment, and there's never a unity. So it is what it is, and it'll all get worked out in the end. But so thank you very much again, gents. It's been a pleasure, and glad to be back.
Thank you. We might get you on for a 4th appearance, maybe a season preview.
All right.
You'll be a regular co-presenter soon, Dan, the way it's going.
From what I've listened to, I think Mr. Leclerc is very.
He's doing well. He's been a pretty solid signing, hasn't he, Gav?
Yes.
God, that was cringe, wasn't it? Sorry, that's really cringe saying that. But you know what I mean.
Our recruitment's stronger than Dragons.
Yes, we've recruited well, unlike the Dragons.
Yeah. If you get his brother on, though, make sure he's standing about 50 foot away, because he's got a set of lungs on him. He stands next to us in the terrace, and he's loud, very, very, very loud, but good fun.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Take care, Dan, and we'll speak to you again and very soon. All right.
Cheers, boss.
Take care. Ta-ra, Dan. There we go. Dan Hallett from the Supporters Club. Good to get him on. It just felt like the perfect week
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
get him on, because I think it was important we heard from the Supporters Club
Yeah.
about what happened, you know. So yeah, thank you to, and it was pretty short notice when they contacted him as well. So thank you to Dan for that. Okay, then it's time for our Gwent Rugby Roundup, and it gives me great pleasure to say, and I'm very excited about this, we are going to have an all Gwent Super Rugby Cup final next week. How brilliant is that?
Yeah, it was,
Vale versus Newport. Can't wait. Come on, Gav, tell us more.
So you've already spoilers, but yeah, SRC semi. So today Newport went to Cardiff Arms Park to play top-ranked Cardiff, and came away 35-20 winners.
What a win.
Newport really in form at the minute, and last time they played, Vale dominated in the forward. So, Newport are perhaps the dark horses, but I think for us, we always knew they were a strong side. And then in the other game played on Saturday, Ebervale 29, Llandovery 28. If you consider that at half-time, Ebervale were 21-5 down in that game.
They
A
were. They
remarkable...
looked down and out. They looked out of it at half time. I was watching it thinking there's no way we're going to come back into this. Llandovery a very good side. But fair play to Ebu.
Yeah, it's
really,
going to be
really
a
good.
fantastic final.
Yeah, the Cricket Club are going to be delighted.
Yeah.
They're going to be another. Did you see that?
I
side
did,
they
yes.
put up.
I did.
So for those who don't know, there's some dispute, isn't there, between the Cricket Club and the Rugby Club, I understand. And the Cricket Club had a side out the front saying that, well, basically wishing Llandovery good luck from the Cricket Club, which is very, very petty and very Welsh village mentality stuff, isn't it?
It's for those who don't know, Eugene Cross Park is host to both Ebervale Rugby Club and Ebervale Cricket Club. And essentially the cricket pitch sits behind the far end, the non-river end of the ground. So the other end of the ground, you've got the clubhouse, and you've got the stand on one side and then the bank on the other. And then there's just open ground, which is the cricket ground, and the cricket terrace is up behind it. And there's always been this, kind of, I'm going back to when I was a kid playing cricket and stuff. There was always that conflict about it. So it's always been there. But yes, it's, come on, boys. The rugby club in the town has got to the final. Let's celebrate that rather than get our knickers in a twist about access to the pitch.
Yeah. But it was just extremely petty. Funny, but also very, very petty and very Welsh.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the things, they used to have touring sides at Ebervale. Glamorgan would play a game up at Ebervale, but that stopped now. But I saw him play Sri Lanka there a lifetime ago. But yeah, but Ebervale Newport final, it's the final we wanted, certainly. Our respective clubs and two Gwent sides. All the Gwent sides go into the playoffs. I think that's a good first SRC for the Gwent sides.
Great stuff. Well done to both teams. Really pleased about that.
So not a lot of grassroots rugby, but in the Prem, Bargoed 28, Pontypridd 19. Pontypridd already won the title, so I think they'd rotated a bit. And Cross Keys 51, Astrid Rhondda 33. Hell of a game that.
Good result.
And in the championship, Aberdeen 15, Talwyn 28. A good solid season for Talwyn mid-table. Bedwas 54, Penalta 14. And your boys on this D 28, Treorchy 22.
Up the D's, great result.
Ending the season on a win.
Yeah, great result that.
But that's all we have in the world of community rugby this week.
Oh, it's a brief one.
Well, Division 1 to everything else has stopped now.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, but yeah, I'm just really chuffed a bit that we've got an all Gwent final. Gwent Rugby has done really well, hasn't it, in Super Rugby Cymru? Pontypool have played their part. Ebu have been really good. Newport have been consistently good. Now, they're a well-coached team, Newport. I know it's a different standard of rugby, but they are a very well-coached side.
They're well-organised, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's the difference at that kind of semi-pro level. Well, it's not the difference. It's all sport. If you're well-organised and well-coached, you'll do well.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I'm going off the topic, Jamie. Lions announcement, no Dragons, only 2 Welshmen. What was your take on that?
I've got no complaints. I must admit, well, when I talked about this on Rap, I had 3 guaranteed Welsh players. So Jack Morgan, Dowie Lake, and Thomas Williams. Those were my 3 picks. Dowie didn't make it. But I also thought that maybe Talupe Faletau would come into the reckoning. But other than that, there was a lot of bolters, wasn't it? Like Blair Murray was a bolter. People talking about Dav Jenkins, that's a bolter. Nicky Smith. I don't think we could complain too much about having just 2 Welshmen in the lines, because I just think that's a reflection of where Welsh rugby is right now. It is a little bit sad. This is what it was like to be a Scotland fan, wasn't it? They had 2 tours where I think they only had a couple of players, 3 at most.
2017, they had 2 players.
Yeah, there was another 2 as well where they only had 2. And I've seen a lot of Welsh people say, oh, I've lost interest in Lions. I can't be asked to support them and I'm not going to watch it. I will, because I love rugby and I love the Lions. I've always been a huge British. Even if there was 0 Welshmen, I'd still be engaged and I'll still watch all the tests and the tour games, because I think it's a great concept.
There's a romance to it. And
yes.
I was in a group chat with friends, and they were quite cynical about it. And I said, this reminds me of watching rugby with my dad. That was my first real experience of watching rugby, watching the Lions with my dad. And there's a romance to it. And, it's...
Yeah, I agree.
There's just something... and it's nice because I get to support English players and Irish players for a change.
Yeah, the squad itself, though, I've got no real complaints. Okay, there was a few surprises. I didn't expect Elliot Daly in there. I didn't expect Scott Cummins in there.
No, Cummins was a surprise for me.
Yeah,
I would take Elliot Daly on tour with me wherever I was going.
Yeah,
Because
I'll
he's
be
a
honest.
Swiss Army knife, isn't he?
Absolutely. Mac Anson, for some reason, maybe I shouldn't have seen that as a surprise, but I did. I didn't think he was going to be selected. But the rest of them, I got no complaints. I am actually pleased to say, this might be unpopular, I'm really pleased to see Henry Pollock in there, because he's a player who I know I'm going to hate when he plays for England.
Oh, yeah.
But when he plays for the Lions, I'm going to love, because he is an absolute gobshite, that kid. He is so talented, but he's a gobshite, and that's exactly the kind of player you need in your team. I think he's fab, I do.
He's shithouse his shithouse, isn't he?
I think he's great. People say, oh, he's arrogant. It's not within rugby values and all this. Oh, bore off.
Rugby values.
We complain about we complain about a lack of personality in rugby. There's no characters, and then you get Henry Pollock, and then people are still moaning. I think he's great. Obviously, like I said, I will hate him when he plays for England, especially against Wales. But I think it's a great story. And I watched the squad announcement. He got by far the biggest cheer in the crowd. He's a very popular player. Yeah. Luke Cowan-Dickey was another one that came out of the blue. Again, maybe I shouldn't have done, but I was not expecting Luke Cowan-Dickey. I thought maybe Jamie George or Dowie Lake would have been in there. But I'm fine with the squad. You as a whole?
Oh no, I think he's picked a good squad. I've seen someone saying, "Oh, it's a really weak squad." Yeah, I'm not saying that.
Weak. It's not weak.
It's built on the foundations of the 2 best teams of the nations, Ireland and England, and takes the best from Scotland and Wales. It's a strong side.
He's got every right to pick whatever players he wants, and like I said, I just think it is sad for Welsh rugby. There's a come down. Apparently, we used to average around 10 players per tour. Like that was the Welsh average. But
that was relatively new, because I started watching the Lions in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think the first tour I remember would have been 85, maybe. And we took 5 players. There was only about 6 or 7 in 89.
Yeah, I think it's definitely on recent times, but I think it was in Rugby World. I saw a stat where Wales would average 10 players per Lions tour, but it's where we are, Gav. I've got no complaints. Yeah, it is a little bit sad, but it's a reflection of Welsh rugby only having 2. But what I would say, there will be injuries. Players will get called up, so we still might see guys like Dowie Lake, Talupe Faletau. I did see some people suggesting Aaron Wainwright. Aaron Wainwright was never in the reckoning for me.
Wayno's so far down the rank in terms of back row, isn't he?
And I don't really know if he'd fit Andy Fowle's system either, if I'm being honest. But you'd be great for the Lions, don't get me wrong. You do a great job midweek. And I love Wayne. I think he's a quality player, but he was never really in contention. No Dragons players were really in contention. So I don't think we could have any complaints, especially with this wretched, embarrassing season that we're having. I don't think we can have too many complaints. But so that's the Lions done. I'm looking forward to it anyway. Should be a decent series. Just before we move on, then, a reminder to, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Rap YouTube channel and leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. We've only had one 5-star review from Reverending Story, 5 stars. He says, very balanced and covers other topics as well as Dragons generally losing. Yes. I mean, we knew that when we signed up to a Dragons pod, you're going to be talking about losses far more than victories.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. We signed up for it. We knew what we were getting, but we would just like to talk about more wins, not embarrassing losses every single week. That's all, you know, we like to do, Gavin. We don't expect to be talking about playoff contenders and, challenging for European Cups, but I would like to talk about more victories.
We've been doing this 2 years and we've talked about 5 wins.
It must be more than that, but I'm pretty sure. Well, we haven't hit double figures with wins. I know that, and this is our 63rd episode, I think.
Yeah, two games this year, 3 last year, was it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, we're not counting pre-season.
No
wins. Yeah, but like I said, that's the Dragons. That's just who they are. So unfortunately, we
that's our life.
Yes. Losers, serial losers. But anyway, yeah, thank you for that. Much appreciated. Please leave us a 5-star review and you'll get a mention as well if you do it, and it's much appreciated. Right, before we go then, just very quickly, Bulls next. Did you see the Leinster Zebra score on the weekend?
I did not.
Right, so Leinster put, I think it was 75 points on Zebra. They picked a full-strength squad, right? And they included Jody Barrett, who should have started against Northampton, but they started him against Zebra. So they've had a lot of stick for that Leinster, and rightly so, because it's just a little bit silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
well, it cost them against Northampton, didn't it?
It certainly did. I'm not just saying this now to be controversial, but it was 76 points they put on Zebra, 76-5. I genuinely believe, and I hope I'm wrong, but I genuinely believe we could see a very similar scoreline on Saturday with the Dragons playing the Bulls, because I watched the Bulls. They pumped Cardiff. The scoreline doesn't reflect Bulls' dominance. Gav, they're so powerful. They are and this Dragons team, they're not going to cope with it. They are going to get absolutely creamed. We could be looking at a record defeat. And I hate saying that. I'm not saying it to be controversial, but we could be seriously looking at a 70-pointer year easily. Maybe 80, I don't know. Any thoughts on that at all? You've gone silent now. Is it just sinking in?
Well, we did better than we thought we would against the Stormers.
Yeah, but to be honest, Gav, I don't think the Stormers were that good. I mean, they'll be much better against Cardiff next week, guaranteed. But I don't know whether they underestimated us, but it's frustrating, isn't it? Like, they weren't very good, yet they still beat us by 36 points. Again, that just explains how bad the Dragons are when teams don't even have to be very good and they cruise to bonus point wins. But up against this Bulls team, who was so big, so powerful, so much quality across the board, it must be so demoralising for the players knowing what they're facing next. And the worst thing is, they can't stop it.
No.
There's nothing they can do to stop the Bulls. They know they're going to get beaten heavily. They know they're going to get absolutely pulverised. And there's not a thing they can do about it. It's grim, isn't it?
It is. Which is why things have to change.
Because we want to be at least competitive. I watched Scarlets and Lions today, right? And fair play to Scarlets. Fantastic victory.
Oh, yeah.
When things went wrong, they didn't panic like we did. They didn't buckle. They didn't run out of steam. They stuck to their guns, even when Lions threatened to steal it, even when they were butchering opportunities. There's a lot of character in that Scarlet squad. I was watching this thinking, I can never see Dragons pulling off a win like this.
No.
I can never see Dragons going to South Africa and winning in the manner that the Scarlets did on Sunday, or that Cardiff have done, or Ospreys previously when they beat the Lions at Johannesburg. And that makes me really sad. I can never see Dragons being that team. But yeah, it's going to get ugly. This is damage limitation, and it's going to get very, very ugly. I don't think any of us should be surprised if we see... It'll be at least 60-odd points, but I don't think we should be surprised if it's 70 or even 80. That's just a grim reality.
Jesus.
I know. It's awful, isn't it? But that's where this team is. They are going to get absolutely creamed. But... quickly, I want a prediction from you, because I'm really excited about this All Gwent Super Rugby final between Ebro and Newport. What's your prediction? I got a feeling you'll say Ebro because you're an Ebro fan, but how are you feeling about it, Gav, about this game.
Well,
I'd love to go to this, I would.
we won convincingly at Eugene Cross Park, but lost heavily
Yes.
down at Sputty. So 21-15 to Ebervale.
Okay. I'm going for a Newport win. I just got a feeling. I think this is Newport's year. I think it's going to be a really good game, but I think they'll do a job up front, Newport. But then again, I thought that last time and they didn't. It was actually Ebu who did a job on Newport up front in that televised game. So I think Newport will win. But how good to have two Gwent teams in the Super Rugby coming finals. It's going to be great. It will be live on S4C, won't it? I would have thought.
Oh, yeah, it will be.
It will be live, yeah. I don't know when it is. Is it next Saturday or next Sunday? I haven't seen
next
the details.
Saturday.
It is there. Okay, yeah. I'll look forward to that. Right, I think we'll wrap it up there. We've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you to those supporters who got in touch. Gavin, thank you for joining me. Thanks to Dan again. And thank you to our friends at Riverside Sports Bar for their continued support of the podcast. We'll be back next week. It's not going to be pretty talking about that Bulls game, is it? But we will be back next week and we'll look back on the season as a whole. It's going to be a fun one. But until then, thanks for listening and we'll catch you on the next one. Ta-ra!